Christianity once felt like one great umbrella, shared beliefs spread across enormous distances. But systems change when daily life changes. The same prayers sounded different in different worlds. The Mediterranean connected Rome and Constantinople until it also became a gap. Routes don't just move people, they shape trust. The farther a system stretches, the harder it is to stay coherent. Rome's world grew unstable as emperors faded and invasions rose. Constantinople remained an imperial machine, orderly, wealthy, and watched. Same faith, different pressures. Early Christians tolerated variety, different melodies, calendars, and customs. Tolerance works when people assume good faith. But good faith is a fragile resource. Once a faith spans continents, it needs organization. Organization creates paperwork. Paperwork creates bottlenecks, and bottlenecks create resentment. Shared persecution once forged unity. As danger faded, the shared story weakened. When the common enemy disappears, internal differences get louder. The West learned survival through fragmentation. Local leaders, local defenses. The East learned survival through empire, court rituals, diplomacy, and centralized power. Unity can look stable while pressure accumulates underneath. Systems don't break when they're loud. They break when they're strained. Language drift made negotiations slow and exhausting. When translation fails, people assume bad intent. A system built on trust becomes brittle. Meanings change slowly, like currents in the sea. The same phrase can land as respect in one place and insult in another. Knowledge doesn't vanish, it rearranges. Shells become boundaries. What you read shapes what you think is normal. Small cultural misfires feel personal when tension is already high, and once pride enters, even harmless customs become tests. Distance isn't just miles. It's routines, seasons, and who you meet. Over generations, distance becomes identity. When communities teach the next generation differently, disagreement becomes automatic. People defend what they learn before they examine why. Even sacred art begins to speak different dialects. When styles harden, they become flags, without ever becoming official flags. By now, misunderstandings aren't rare events. They're expected, and expectation shapes every future encounter. Once authority is questioned, every meeting becomes a power test. Systems love clear hierarchies, but two hierarchies can't both be top. Symbols simplify complex arguments. But symbols also trap people, because stepping back feels like surrendering identity. Control of entry is control of legitimacy. If you can block the doorway, you can block the future. When processes are weaponized, paperwork becomes a battlefield. Not with swords, just with rules. Private talks can save systems if the people inside them still believe compromise is honorable. Here, compromise starts to look like weakness. In systems, height often stands in for legitimacy. If you're higher, you're above. That logic is hard to unlearn. Two centers of authority can coexist only if both accept limits. When limits vanish, the system becomes a tug-of-war. Once authority becomes the issue, every future difference gets filtered through power. The doorway to reconciliation narrows, quietly, decisively. Ritual is how communities feel united, but ritual can also become a border. Once a habit becomes identity, changing it feels like betrayal. The argument wasn't only doctrine, it was meaning. Even bread could become a signal. This is who we are. Processions are moving systems, order, rhythm, and hierarchy. When the rhythm changes, the system stops syncing. Some differences are tiny, but when systems are tense, tiny differences become proof. Proof becomes pride. Even atmosphere divides. Chant, incense, posture. When your senses say we're different, your mind follows. Clothing isn't just fabric in a ritual system, it's messaging. Over time, the message hardens. We are not them. Systems don't always need orders. Sometimes people simply learn where they belong, and then they stop crossing. At first, difference is variety. Then it becomes identity. When identity hardens, the shared center, the place where compromise lives, shrinks to nothing. Politics doesn't need to shout to win. It only needs to stand in the doorway. Once power steps into sacred space changes shape. When rulers host religious leaders, the room decides the outcome. Who sits higher? Who stands closer? Who is watched? Those are answers too. Control of movement is control of negotiation. If you can slow the messenger, you can shape the message. Money is invisible force. It changes incentives without changing doctrine. Systems bend toward whoever controls the tolls. Once state officials join religious rituals, they change the choreography. And when choreography changes, identity changes. Guards can be safety, or a reminder of who commands. In a tense system, even protection feels like pressure. Trade routes and sea lanes can connect systems or squeeze them. When connection becomes leverage, trust evaporates. Politics doesn't have to change beliefs to change outcomes. It only has to redraw the boundaries of who can act and where. By 1054, centuries of tension were stacked like dry wood. One spark didn't create the fire, it only revealed it. A negotiation collapses into a symbol, an object carried forward with intent. Once an object becomes a message, tone becomes destiny. A threshold is just stone, until it becomes a decision. Systems break when one side crosses and the other refuses to follow. When the object is placed, everyone understands. This is no longer debate. This is a marker that will be remembered. No swords are needed. The system does the cutting. A room can turn cold with nothing but posture and silence. When a system breaks, people sort themselves. The sorting feels natural, because incentives make it feel safe. Exits are decisions made physical. Once one side leaves, returning becomes harder than leaving was. After 1054, the building stays, the people stay, but the system that made them one no longer meshes. After the split, life continues, just organized differently. Systems don't stop, they reroute. Separation becomes routine. Doors that once stayed open become habits, closed, locked, and forgotten. Even when they share a street, they no longer share a rhythm. The gap becomes part of the ceremony. A split lasts when the next generation grows up inside it. When children learn the line becomes real. Ships still sail, goods still move, but the system of shared authority no longer travels with them. Sometimes there's no official rule. People simply start choosing where they feel safe. Over time, choice becomes segregation. A small mechanical problem can symbolize a big social truth. Systems built separately stop fitting together. At first, separation feels temporary. Then it feels normal. And when it feels normal, it becomes durable. Time doesn't heal every split. Sometimes it turns the split into landscape. What once was shocking becomes familiar. Some connections, once broken, are replaced by workarounds instead of repairs. The missing middle becomes the message. History gets stored, categorized, guarded. Over time, separate archives create separate memories of the same past. Even across water, systems can remain separate. They can see each other, trade, even speak, yet never merge. What begins as a disagreement can become a wall, then a habit, then a city plan. A system can make a border feel like a natural feature. Both traditions still trace their roots to the same early church. The origin is shared, the routes diverged. Distance doesn't always mean hatred. Sometimes it means separate systems coexisting, respectfully but separately. The Great Schism wasn't one argument on one day. It was a system drifting, hardening, and finally snapping. And once snapped, it shaped everything that followed.